Welcome to the deep dive. So you want to learn Afrikaans, huh? You've sent over a bunch of beginner grammar lessons. It's great that we're going to be able to dig into not just the rules, but also how those rules kind of show us the Afrikaans way of thinking.
Exactly.
Get ready for some, I don't know, surprises and aha moments.
I think you'll find it quite fascinating. Afrikaans with its Dutch roots and unique evolution. It gives us a really interesting look at how language shapes our understanding of the world.
I love it. Okay, let's dive into our first topic, the power of punctuation in Afrikaans.
Punctuation, often overlooked,
Right.
is the unsung hero of clear communication,
Yeah,
especially in Afrikaans.
I bet. The materials mention something about a misplaced comma leading to, well, a suggestion of eating children.
Oh, right.
That's a punctuation disaster I want to avoid.
Absolutely. That example just highlights how crucial punctuation is
Yeah,
for conveying the intended meaning.
yeah.
In Afrikaans, just like in English, we have our, the usual suspects, comma, period, exclamation mark, and question mark.
So it's not just about following the rules. It's about avoiding some serious misunderstandings.
Oh, for sure.
What's something about Afrikaans punctuation that might surprise people?
Do you know that in Afrikaans, the placement of a comma sometimes can dramatically change the meaning of a sentence? It's not just about separating items in a list, it can also signal
Okay.
subtle shifts
Oh, wow.
in emphasis
Interesting.
and interpretation.
So that makes you really pay attention to those commas.
Absolutely.
Thinking about punctuation in this way, why is it so important for making sure that other people understand what you mean?
Well, because it's all about clarity.
Right.
If you're not clear in your punctuation,
Yeah,
you can actually end up conveying
a very different message.
a totally different message than you intended.
All right, let's test our punctuation knowledge with a quick quiz. First question. What punctuation mark signals a question in Afrikaans?
That would be the question mark, just like in English.
Of course. Now, how about when you want to inject some excitement or urgency into your writing? What punctuation mark comes to the rescue?
You need that exclamation mark.
Exactly. Last question. In the sentence, "Ek het appels, pisang en pear," which translates to "I have apples, bananas, and pears," where would you place the commas?
You would need commas
Okay,
between each fruit.
right.
So the sentence would read, Ek et appelles, pisangs en pear.
Perfect. Now let's move on to a topic that's all about the rhythm of language. Syllables.
Syllables. They're the building blocks of words, and understanding them is really, really key
Yeah.
to mastering pronunciation
Okay.
and developing a feel for the flow of Afrikaans.
The materials you sent over mentioned a fun, hands-on way to learn about syllables in Afrikaans. What's the secret?
Did you know that clapping your hands as you say a word can help you identify the syllables?
Oh, fun.
Each clap represents a syllable break, making it, fun and interactive way to learn.
That's a great tip. I can see kids really enjoying that. Thinking about it, how do syllables help us beyond just pronunciation? Why are they so important for reading and spelling?
Well, they help us break down words
Yeah,
into manageable chunks,
right.
which makes it easier to decode
Makes sense.
than when we're reading
Uh-huh.
and encode them when we're spelling.
Let's put our syllable skills to the test. First question. How many syllables do you hear in the word vandag, meaning today?
Vandag has 2 syllables. Vandag.
You got it. Now, what about the word hond, meaning dog? What's the main vowel sound you hear?
The main vowel sound in hond is a long O.
Right again. Last question. Which word has 3 syllables? Potlud, meaning pencil, or ontdekking, meaning discovery?
The word with 3 syllables is ontdekking.
Ontdekking.
You're a syllable superstar. Now let's move on to making things plural in Afrikaans.
Plurals in Afrikaans are generally straightforward,
Okay.
but as with any language,
There are always exceptions.
there's always a few.
Delightful exceptions
love those.
that keep things interesting.
From what I've seen, Afrikaans often adds E or S to make words plural. Is there anything else about plurals that people should be aware of?
Did you know that some Afrikaans words have irregular plurals
Okay.
that don't follow the typical patterns?
Interesting.
For example, huis, house, becomes huis, but kind, child, becomes kinders.
Oh, wow.
These irregular plurals often reflect older forms of the language, offering a glimpse into its history.
That's really interesting. Those exceptions make you realize that language is constantly evolving.
It is, yeah.
Thinking about plurals, why is it important to know if we're talking about one thing or many things?
Well, I think it's essential for clarity and accuracy in communication.
Right, right.
If you say, I have 1 cat,
Yeah.
that's different from saying I have 5 cats.
Time for a plural pop quiz. First question.
Ah.
What's the plural of boom, meaning tree?
The plural of boom is boom.
Well done. Next question. How do you make the word book, meaning book, plural?
To make book plural, you add an E, resulting in book.
That's right. Last question. Which is the correct plural form for cats? Cates or cate?
The correct plural form is kate, simply adding an E.
Perfect. You've mastered the art of pluralization in Afrikaans. Now get ready to step back in time as we explore the past tense.
The past tense in Afrikaans is it's almost like a little formula.
Oh, okay.
It's a clever combination of elements that transports us to events that have already happened.
I like it.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, it involves using het and adding gi to verbs. Is there anything about this seemingly simple formula that might surprise us?
Did you know that some verbs don't follow the regular het plus ga pattern?
Interesting.
For example, gaan, to go, becomes het gegaan in the past tense, not het gegaan.
Okay.
These regular verbs add, a touch of complexity,
Yeah.
but also reflect the rich history of the language.
Those irregular verbs always keep things interesting. Thinking about the past tense, how does understanding this concept help us communicate more effectively?
Because it allows us to place events
Right.
in their proper time context.
Okay.
We can distinguish between
Yeah.
what's happening now, what happened before,
Makes sense.
and what might happen in the future.
Okay, ready for a past tense challenge. First question. What's the past tense of ek sing, meaning I sing?
The past tense would be ek huzing.
You nailed it. How about ek loop, meaning I walk? How would that change in the past tense?
Ek loop becomes ek het geloop in the past tense.
Right again. Last question. Is et gegaan an example of a regular or irregular verb in the past tense?
Het gegaan is an example of an irregular verb as it doesn't follow that standard A pattern.
Excellent. You are on a roll with Afrikaans grammar.
It's fun, isn't it?
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Let's take a break here and come back for part 2 of our Afrikaans deep dive. We'll pick up where we left off and explore even more fascinating features of this captivating language.
Sounds great. One of the things that I just love about Afrikaans is how it uses diminutives.
Okay.
It's like adding a touch of warmth and affection to the language.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can make almost anything sound cuter in Afrikaans. Is there a specific trick to forming diminutives?
Did you know that in Afrikaans, you can usually create a diminutive by adding chachi or iki to the end of a word?
So simple.
Yeah, it's a simple but effective way to, express endearment or just kind of soften the tone.
That's so charming. It's like you're giving words a little hug. Thinking about the power of diminutives, why do you think we like to make things sound smaller and cuter? Especially when it comes to language. What is it about those sounds that appeals to us?
I think it taps into our natural tendency to find things that are small and cute appealing, right? It evokes feelings of protectiveness and affection.
Yeah.
And it can also make things sound, less intimidating.
Yes, threatening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. More approachable.
Let's have some fun with diminutives. First question, what's the diminutive form of cat, meaning cat?
The diminutive of cat is kadji, which is like saying kitty in English.
Adorable. Now, how would you transform the word store, meaning chair, into its smaller, cuter counterpart?
To make stol diminutive, you would add uji, resulting in stolchi, a charming little chair.
Perfect. Last question, which is the correct diminutive form of boom, meaning tree, boomji, or boompai?
The correct diminutive is boompai, a delightful little tree.
You're a diminutive expert. Now, let's shift gears and talk about something that can be a bit tricky. Pronouns?
Pronouns.
They're like the shortcuts of language, but sometimes those shortcuts can lead to confusion. They can. Yeah.
Pronouns are essential for smooth communication, but they can also be a source of grammatical errors.
For sure.
If you're not careful.
Right.
In Afrikaans, as in many languages, choosing the right pronoun depends on, the context.
Okay.
And the relationship between the speaker and the person or thing being referred to.
That makes sense. It's not just about avoiding repetition. It's about using the correct form to convey the right level of formality or respect.
Right, exactly.
What's something about Afrikaans pronouns that might surprise people?
Did you know that the choice of pronoun in Afrikaans
Yeah.
can sometimes reflect subtle social nuances?
Oh, interesting.
For example, using the formal you
Hmm.
instead of the informal jy for you
Yeah.
can indicate respect or distance.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Highlighting the importance of understanding these distinctions.
That's a great reminder that language is more than just words. It's about navigating social dynamics.
It is. It is.
Thinking about the function of pronouns, how would you say they help us communicate more clearly and effectively?
They help us avoid repetition,
Yeah.
which can make our sentences
Right.
more concise and easier to understand.
Okay.
They also help to clarify who or what we're talking about, which can prevent confusion, especially when we're
Yeah.
talking about multiple people or things.
Let's put our pronoun knowledge to the test. First, Krojan. What pronoun would you use in Afrikaans for Jan and I?
For Jan and I, you would use the pronoun ons, meaning we.
Correct. Now, how do you say she in Afrikaans?
She in Afrikaans is sie.
You got it. Last question. What pronoun would you use to replace die kinders, meaning the children?
The pronoun for the children is hulle, meaning they.
Perfect. You've mastered the pronouns. Now let's explore those little words that connect our thoughts and ideas.
Conjunction.
Conjunctions.
Yeah.
They are the glue
Okay.
that holds sentences together, helping us create complex structures.
And express relationships between different parts of our thoughts.
Yeah.
In Afrikaans, we have conjunctions like en for and,
Mhm.
maar for but, and want for because, just like in English.
It seems like conjunctions are pretty straightforward. Is there anything about them that might surprise people, especially in Afrikaans?
Did you know that the way conjunctions are used can actually reveal a lot about a language's structure
Interesting.
and logic?
Hmm.
In Afrikaans, the placement of conjunctions can sometimes subtly alter
Oh.
the meaning of a sentence,
Wow.
highlighting the importance of paying attention
Right?
to these seemingly small words.
That's a fascinating insight. It makes you realize that even the most basic elements of language can have hidden depths. Thinking about the power of conjunctions, how would you say they help us build more nuanced and interesting sentences?
Well, they allow us to connect our ideas
Okay.
in a more sophisticated way,
Hmm,
right?
yeah.
Instead of just stringing together
Right.
simple sentences.
Let's test our conjunction skills. First question. What conjunction would you use to join the sentences ik hardloop, meaning I run, and ik is moog, meaning I am tired?
To connect those sentences, you would use the conjunction want, meaning because.
Okay.
The sentence would read, ik hardloop want, ik is moog, I run because I'm tired.
That's right. Next question. What conjunction would you use to join the sentences ek slap, meaning I sleep, and ek droom, meaning I dream?
To join ek slap and ek droom, you would use the conjunction ek, meaning and. The sentence would read, ek slap and ek droom, I sleep and I dream.
Perfect. Last question. How do you say but in Afrikaans?
But in Afrikaans is maar.
You're a conjunction connoisseur.
Yeah.
Now get ready to be amazed because we're about to delve into one of the most expressive features of Afrikaans, the intensive form.
The intensive
Yeah.
form is one of the most delightful aspects of
Yeah.
Afrikaans. It allows you to take your descriptions to a whole new level,
Yeah.
adding an extra layer of emphasis and vividness.
It sounds like the intensive form is all about turning up the volume on your adjectives.
It is, it is.
Is there a specific trick to forming these intensive expressions?
Did you know that the intensive form in Afrikaans
Yeah.
often involves using specific words that intensify the meaning of an adjective?
Okay, good.
For example, instead of just saying bay warm, very hot, you could say ververd warm, fire hot,
Oh, I like that.
to create, a more dramatic
Yeah.
and evocative image.
That's a fantastic example to like you're painting with words, using those intensive expressions to create a more vibrant picture in the listener's mind. Thinking about the impact of these intensifiers, how would you say they enhance the emotional and sensory richness of language?
I think they make our language more expressive
Yeah.
and engaging.
Okay.
They allow us to convey the intensity of our feelings
Yeah.
and the vividness of our experiences
Right.
in a way that just, plain adjectives sometimes can't.
Let's put our intensive form knowledge to the test. First question. What's the intensive form of bay warm, meaning very hot?
The intensive form of bay warm is verwarm, which literally means fire hot.
All right.
It's a much more vivid
It is.
way to express extreme heat.
Wow, that's intense. Next question. How would you say very scared in a way that truly emphasizes the fear?
To express extreme fear, you would say, dude's bang.
Okay.
Which literally means dead scared.
Oh, wow.
Right. Much more powerful way to convey a feeling of terror.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
Last question. What intensive form means extremely clean?
The intensive form for extremely clean is silver spoon,
Okay.
meaning silver clean.
Oh, wow. I like that.
It evokes a sense of like sparkling, pristine cleanliness.
You've mastered the art of intensification.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift gears and explore a topic that can sometimes feel a bit like a game of telephone, indirect speech.
Indirect speech.
Yeah, it's a crucial element.
It is.
Language, allowing us to report
Okay. Yeah.
what someone said
Yes.
without directly quoting them.
Right.
In Afrikaans, as in many languages, it involves subtle shifts in verb tenses and pronouns to accurately convey the original message.
Exactly.
It sounds like there's a lot of nuance involved in getting indirect speech right. Is there anything about Afrikaans indirect speech that might surprise people?
Did you know that in Afrikaans, changing from direct to indirect speech often involves more than just shifting pronouns and verb tenses?
Oh, interesting.
You might also need to adjust the word order
Okay.
or add conjunctions
Right.
to ensure that the sentence flows smoothly and accurately reflects that original meaning.
That's a great reminder that language is a complex system
It is.
with interconnected parts.
Yeah.
Even seemingly small changes can have a big impact on the overall meaning. Thinking about indirect speech, why is it important to be able to accurately convey what someone else has said?
Well, I think it's important for a number of reasons. First, it allows us to share information
Right?
and ideas with others in a way that is, clear, accurate, and respectful. It also helps us to avoid misunderstanding
Right.
and misinterpretations, which can be especially important
Yeah.
in sensitive situations.
Let's test our indirect speech skills. First question. How would you change the sentence, Ik is happy, meaning I am happy, say Marie, meaning says Marie, into indirect speech?
In indirect speech, the sentence would become Marie say that Sibley is, meaning Marie says that she is happy.
Okay.
Notice how the pronoun ik, I, changes to she to reflect Marie's perspective.
That's a subtle but important change. Next question. How would you convert the sentence, Ek say, Ek het sie get, meaning I say I have eaten, into indirect speech?
In indirect speech, the sentence would become ek say that ik see it, meaning I say that I have eaten.
Okay.
The quotation marks are removed,
Right.
and the conjunction that is added to connect the two parts of the sentence.
You're an indirect speech expert. Last question. Which is the correct indirect speech version? Jan say he is moeg, meaning Jan says he is tired, or Jan say ik is moeg, meaning Jan says I am tired.
The correct indirect speech version is Jan say he is moeg,
Okay.
using the pronoun hij, he, to refer to Jan in the indirect statement.
You've nailed it. Now let's explore a grammatical concept that's all about shifting the focus, the passive voice.
The passive voice is it's an intriguing aspect of language.
Yeah.
It allows us to emphasize the action itself
Okay.
rather than the actor.
Interesting.
Right.
Right.
In Afrikaans,
Yeah.
as in English, it involves specific grammatical constructions
Right.
that signal this shift in perspective.
From what I've seen, Afrikaans often uses words like word and endure to form the passive voice. Is there anything else about this grammatical construction that might surprise people?
Did you know that even though the passive voice shifts the focus away from the actor, Afrikaans often still includes a reference to the actor,
Interesting.
using the word duur, meaning by.
Okay.
For example, you might say, Die appel word get door die kind.
Okay.
The apple is eaten by the child. Right. Putting the emphasis on the apple,
Yeah.
but still acknowledging the child's role.
That's fascinating. Because the passive voice in Afrikaans allows for a more nuanced perspective, acknowledging both the action and the actor, even if the focus is shifted. Thinking about the choice between active and passive voice, why might someone choose to use the passive voice in certain situations? What kind of effect does it create?
Well, I think the passive voice can be really useful when you want to emphasize the action or the result of an action rather than the person or thing that performed it.
Okay.
It can also be used to create a sense of objectivity.
Interesting.
or formality in writing.
Okay, let's test our passive voice prowess. First question, how would you change the sentence, Die Kind eet die Appel, meaning the child eats the apple, into the passive voice?
In the passive voice, the sentence would become Die Appelword geht durch die Kind, meaning the apple is eaten by the child. The focus shifts from the child to the apple, highlighting what happens to the apple.
Excellent. Next question, what word is added to the sentence? Die Hond by die Man, meaning the dog bites the man, when you change it to the passive voice.
The word that's added is word,
Okay.
resulting in Die Bandword gebiet der die Hond. The man is bitten by the dog.
You're on a roll. Last question. Is the sentence die Ball word geskopt, meaning the ball is kicked, in the active or passive voice?
That sentence is clearly in the passive voice, as the ball is the recipient of the action rather than the performer.
You've mastered the passive voice.
Yeah.
Now get ready for unique linguistic adventure because we're about to explore the world of double negation in Afrikaans.
The double nigh construction is one of the most distinctive features of Afrikaans.
Yes, it is.
Right. It really sets it apart from many other languages and adds a touch of emphasis and flair to negations.
I've heard about this. It sounds like Afrikaans really wants to make sure there's no misunderstanding when it comes to saying no.
It does. It does.
Is there anything else about this double negation that might surprise people?
Did you know that the double nigh isn't just about emphasis?
Yeah.
It's also about grammatical correctness.
Wow.
In Afrikaans, using only one nigh in a sentence can sometimes create ambiguity or even change the intended meaning.
That's fascinating. It highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of grammar, even when it comes to seemingly simple concepts like negation.
Exactly.
Thinking about this unique feature, why do you think Africans developed this double nigh structure? What might it tell us about the evolution of the language?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah.
You know, there are a few theories about
Yeah.
why Afrikaans uses the double nigh.
Okay.
One theory is that it developed from the influence of Malay and Portuguese,
Huh.
which were spoken by some of the early settlers in South Africa.
Okay.
Another theory is that it's a way of, you know, emphasizing the negative, making it absolutely clear that something is not the case.
Right.
Whatever the reason, it's certainly a unique,
Yeah.
colorful feature of the language.
Let's test our double negation dexterity. First question. How would you make the sentence Hij speelt buiten, meaning he plays outside, negative?
To make the sentence negative, you would use the double nigh construction.
Okay.
Hij speelde nie buiten nie, meaning he does not play outside.
Perfect. Next question. Where would you place the first nigh in the sentence Ek lees die boek, meaning I read the book?
You would place the first nigh
Okay.
after the verb lees,
Right.
resulting in the sentence Ek lees nie de boek nie.
Meaning I do not read the book.
Excellent. Last question. Is the sentence Ek gaan nie huis toe nie, meaning I am not going home, a grammatically correct negative sentence?
Yes, that sentence is perfectly correct.
Okay.
Adhering to the double nigh rule.
You've conquered the double negation. We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive, haven't we?
We have.
From diminutives to pronouns, conjunctions, the intensive form, indirect speech, passive voice, and even double negation.
It's been a whirlwind.
It's amazing to see how all these elements work together
They do.
to create such a rich and expressive language.
They really do.
Absolutely. And we're not done yet. Join us for part 3 of our Afrikaans deep dive, where we'll explore even more fascinating features of this captivating language.
Sounds great.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the final stretch of our Afrikaans grammar adventure, and I'm already feeling a bit nostalgic, you know?
I know. It's amazing
Yeah.
how quickly you can start to appreciate the intricacies of a language, even after just a brief exploration.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've covered so much ground already, from punctuation and plurals to those amazing intensive forms and the double nigh construction. But there's one last essential element that we need to explore: question words.
Question words, the gateways to knowledge and understanding.
I like that.
Right. They're how we probe deeper, challenge assumptions,
Yeah.
and satisfy our insatiable curiosity.
I've noticed that Africans' question words seem pretty similar to their English counterparts, often starting with W.
Right.
Is there anything about these question words that might surprise people?
Did you know that this pattern of question words, starting with ho or w,
Right.
is actually found in many languages around the world?
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's a fascinating example of how humans across, different cultures and linguistic families have developed similar ways of expressing, their desire to learn and understand.
It's like a universal code.
It's for curiosity.
It is.
Thinking about the role of question words, how would you say they contribute to our ability to kind of think critically and engage in meaningful conversations?
Well, I think question words allow us to go beyond just, stating facts and opinions. They allow us to ask for clarification, to explore different perspectives, and to, dig deeper into the topics that we're discussing.
Let's put our question word knowledge to the test.
All right.
First question. What does the word war mean in English?
War means where.
Okay.
Helping us to ask about, locations and directions.
Correct. Next question. Which question word would you use to ask about time in Afrikaans?
To ask about time, you'd use one year,
Okay.
meaning when.
Excellent. Last question. How would you translate the question, why are you laughing, into Afrikaans?
The Afrikaans translation would be hoekom lag jy.
Okay.
It's a very direct
and simple way to inquire about the reason for someone's laughter.
You've aced the question words. And with that, we have completed our whirlwind tour
We have.
of Afrikaans grammar.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has, from those tiny punctuation marks that shape meaning to the powerful intensive forms that add emotional depth. We've explored the essential building blocks of this captivating language.
Absolutely.
It's been an incredible journey. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by the realization that language is so much more than just a set of rules.
I completely agree. It's a living, breathing reflection of culture, history, and human connection.
I love that.
Learning a new language isn't just about, memorizing grammar. It's about opening a window into a different way of seeing the world.
What does this all mean for you, our listener? Well, we hope that this deep dive has given you a solid foundation in Afrikaans grammar and inspired you to continue exploring this beautiful and expressive language.
Absolutely.
Remember, every step you take in your language learning journey brings you closer to a richer understanding of yourself and the world around you. Until next time, keep those grammar gears turning and embrace the joy of discovering new languages and cultures.
Great advice.